Hello friends, welcome to our virtual worship space. Sorry about the cars that will be going past as I record this. Welcome to also the season of creation. This is an observance of 5 weeks from September 1st to October 4th that we have been doing for a number of years now and is celebrated by Orthodox, Catholic, and Protestant Christians from around the world for many, many years. It is a time for us to focus on our fragile and beautiful planet and the ways that our faith calls us to be better stewards of it. Had to let another car go past. I happen to be standing in front of a fig tree, one of several that's on the property here where I live. The figs here are not very big. They're actually quite small this year. The theme for our season of creation this year, among the United Methodists that have put together resources for this series, is first fruits and fig trees. We're looking at the biblical stories throughout the Hebrew Scriptures and the New Testament where figs or fig trees are mentioned and unpacking that. We may also be thinking about first fruits and the kinds of fruits that grow wherever those of us who are celebrating this across our connection, the kinds of things that grow there naturally. You may think about berries that you pick out along the roadsides. That's something that Albert and I like to do. Or maybe you have a fig tree. We're looking at what the Scriptures have to teach us about looking to the trees, looking to the natural seasons of growth, and what Jesus had to say to us about growing ourselves, about being faithful. We have many lessons to learn during this season, and I hope that you'll enjoy the ride. You'll be hearing not only from me, but from a couple of my colleagues. Today's message will come from Pastor Lindsay Bell Kerr of Christ Church, and in a couple of other weeks we will have a message from one of our retired clergy from the area. Again, I'm letting the sounds of motorcycles and cars get past us. Why don't we take a moment to breathe and give thanks for the gift of life, the ways that God's grace is imparted to us through the gifts of creation as we begin worship together.
John 1:44-50. Philip was from Bethsaida, the hometown of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law and the prophets, Jesus, Joseph's son, from Nazareth." Nathanael responded, "Can anything from Nazareth be good?" Philip said, "Come and see." Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said about him, "Here is a genuine Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael asked him, "How do you know me?" Jesus answered, "Before Philip called you, I saw you under the fig tree." Nathanael replied, "Rabbi, you are God's son. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered, "Do you believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than these." Haggai 2:18-19. So take it to heart from this day forward, from the 24th day of the 9th month. Take it to heart from the day when the foundation for the Lord's temple was laid. Is the seed yet in the granary, or the vine, the fig tree, or the pomegranate, or has the olive tree not borne fruit? From this day forward I will bless you.
My California geography is terrible. It was at its worst when I was still living in Berkeley for seminary, and I remember when I got a call from my DS, my last year of seminary, saying that I had been appointed to a church in Santa Rosa. And I was bereft. I was bereft because I don't like the flatlands, because I knew that I couldn't handle the heat of the Central Valley. And if you're saying to yourself, well, Santa Rosa isn't in the Central Valley, I wish we had been able to talk then, because in retrospect, I had confused Santa Rosa for Modesto. I was so nervous driving from Berkeley to Santa Rosa for my first meeting with my staff parish committee. So nervous, in fact, that I didn't think about the fact that I was driving north, never mind crossing the Richmond Bridge. And then all of a sudden, I was in Petaluma, and I felt like I was going home. I felt like I was going home because the farmland and the hills reminded me of the river valley in which I'd grown up. And then the vineyards and the sky were just otherworldly. It didn't take me long to realize that Sonoma County was in fact not Modesto, and that the beauty and the abundance of this place was like something I had never seen before. Today we find Jesus back where he often is, in Galilee. He's at the beginning of his ministry. This is the call story from the Gospel of John. And in this story, Jesus is not only calling his disciples, but his disciples are already calling disciples for him. Andrew and Simon were called in the previous chapter, and now Philip in this one. And then as soon as Jesus calls Philip, Philip calls Nathanael and says, "This is the one we have been waiting for." And then this is confirmed when Jesus demonstrates his psychic capacity. He says, "Nathanael, I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." The fig tree will serve as our primary image in worship for the month of September, in which we'll be celebrating the season of creation, a worship series brought to us by the United Methodist Creation Justice Worship Team. The series explores how we look for hope and take action in the midst of the climate crisis, and we begin today with the idea of abundance. Abundance is often associated with flowering land, whether it's grapevines weaving across the rolling hills or a Gravenstein apple orchard. This sense of abundance that is tied to the land is innate and an ancient aspect of our humanity. From the prophet Haggai, we hear, "Consider from this day on, since the day that the foundation of the Lord's temple was laid, is there any seed left in the barn? Do the vine, the fig tree, the pomegranate, and the olive tree still yield nothing? From this day on, I will bless you." It might be easy to consider abundance when we're looking at pretty pictures, or we're spending a moment or two outside enjoying natural beauty. But in our day-to-day lives, sometimes experiencing abundance can feel like swimming upstream. I think that's in part because of the capitalist system under which we live. In our economic system, the people who have the most to gain from the system do so because of scarcity or the illusion of scarcity that they foster to the detriment of our well-being. We are told that what we have isn't enough, that we ourselves aren't enough, that we always need to be wanting more or buying more. And this is a bit compounded by our American sense of rugged individualism, in which we're told to look down on those who truly do not have enough, because if they wanted to get by, they would work harder. Never mind that right here in Sonoma County, the people who harvest those grapes in those beautiful vineyards don't even make minimum wage. Honestly, climate change has just exacerbated this scarcity mindset. In my first 4 years in Sonoma County, I was outdoors almost every day, grateful and giddy for this land that sustains us. And then after the 2017 fires, my heart changed. Obviously, I had been aware of climate change before, but that disaster, so close to the people I loved, that marred the landscape and the hills around us, it broke something in me. How could I be celebrating the beauty of the natural world when the world seemed to be ending? How could I experience the abundance of creation when it seemed as if we had lost so much already? The cruel indifference of the world is there for a flash in Scripture this morning, too. While he ends up going along, did you catch Nathanael's first response to Philip's invitation to Jesus? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? From that comment, you might be able to guess that among the local villages in the first century, Nazareth wasn't the most affluent. It was the opposite of Healdsburg. But the comment says more about Nathanael than it does about Nazareth. Nathanael is jaded. He is tired. He is exhausted by living under the weight of the most powerful empire on earth. The idea that the Messiah would show up now, from this place, in this time. I wonder if Jesus truly has the gift of premonition. If he did, wouldn't he have thrown that comment back at Nathanael? I certainly would have. But Jesus doesn't do that. Jesus only mentions the fig tree, which, if you know anything about agriculture in that part of the world, isn't as impressive as you might think. In what is now modern-day Palestine and Israel, figs are a staple food because the fruit on any given tree ripens in stages. Figs don't need to be harvested and stored all at once, and they grow anywhere. A number of years ago, I ran a 10K race in Bethlehem, Palestine, and the aid stations just rooted us under fig trees where children were sitting in the branches and would hand small pieces of fruit to us as we passed by. The fig trees were everywhere. It would be like saying to someone in Guerneville, I saw you under a redwood tree. And so what is it that Nathanael is responding to? What is it about Jesus that makes Nathanael's cynicism disappear? This past week, I was having coffee with a rabbinic colleague of mine, and he reminded me of the Hebrew word dayenu. Dayenu is best translated as it would have been enough, and the word is used as a response in a song sung in the Passover Seder. It goes something like, if God had brought us up out of Egypt, it would have been enough. If he had split the sea but not led us to dry land, it would have been enough. If he had taken us onto the dry land but not supplied our needs in the wilderness, dayenu. If he had fed us the manna but not given us Shabbat, dayenu. And it goes on and on. I was glad to be reminded of it because it's a profound spiritual practice, a practice that is built for times of sorrow and difficulty and pain because it reorients us towards abundance. It reminds us that what has already been has been beyond what we ever could have expected. It grounds us in gratitude. And gratitude, the only worthwhile human response to God's abundance, has the capacity to change everything. Jesus saw him under a fig tree, but there were fig trees as far as the eye could see. And that's the point. There are fig trees as far as the eye can see, even under the weight of empire, even in the shadow of this political system, even in the midst of planet-altering climate change. There are fig trees as far as the eye can see. Jesus knows this and lives this and teaches this and emulates this. And so it is not the small premonition, but there is something about Jesus that calls to Nathanael and to us. There is something to this man who multiplies the loaves and fishes and turns the water into wine. And it starts with his understanding of God's abundance, with his willingness to live, work, and eventually give his life to the testimony that this abundance must be shared by all, especially the least among us. Jesus knows and offers us the truth of God's grace in the world, which is that there is already enough. There is more than enough. There is plenty even. Hallelujah.